Hi there. Today we're going to be talking about whether or not law should exist for secured communications. My name is Steve, this is TQA Weekly, and you're going to learn why prohibition legislation and regulation may not work in the way that you actually think it would work, especially if you are an old, crusty politician. So we're going to start off with a very basic premise. Governments around the world would love to control how citizens communicate and their access to secured communications, whether it be malicious or non-malicious governments. Unfortunately, if you're going to try to convince me that American government is non-malicious, you're losing your time. I won't believe you. In much the same way as Russia, North Korea, and everything else out there right now, the United States and all these other places have proven time and time again that their legislation of encrypted communications has always affected people who are innocent first before ever affecting the guilty parties. See, a lot of legislation, regulation, and prohibitions are under the guise of preventing the bad guy from gaining access, which means that in the case of encryption, they like to bring up the story of how the bad guy is using encryption so that if no one uses encryption, they can see what's finally going on. But that's not how it works. People who have no choice and those that don't care will continue to use prohibited technologies and methods no matter what. So the limitations, regulations, and prohibitions have always affected those who are innocent, especially when it comes to communication. If we use Edward Snowden as an example, we had the PRISM problem that we had many years ago where governments were just sapping off large amounts of information. How did we solve this? Through encryption. And we even made it by default. At one point, Apple was challenged by the American government to make a universal key to be able to access every single iPhone. And they challenged that again. Why? Because having a universal key, looking at the track record of every single government, meant that the bad guys would also gain access to all the information and innocent people would again be caught in the crossfire. A non-malicious attempt would be an attempt that affects everyone equally and that does not exist when we're talking about encryption. One of the craziest things that people are not aware of are the dangers of unsecured communications. And I'm going to break it down for you. It makes it possible for governments and police to take you into custody, fine, imprison, and worse, depending on whatever you say or whatever you do on the internet. If you do not have encrypted communications, though, you are all of a sudden subject to identity theft, to fraud, to harassment and blackmail when it comes to the internet. There is no way to be safe on the internet. And encryption is tantamount to privacy. Without privacy, you no longer have identity. If without identity, you no longer have culture. And nobody wants that either. So, the only solution, the only way you can properly protect people, no matter who is using it, good or bad, is to actually make secured communications, encryption, which was once thought of as a military weapon, as a human right. And making it a human right would finally prevent malicious governments from ever endangering the lives of innocent people while trying to target, supposedly, the bad guys. Because as we have seen, it is not just the war in Ukraine that's going on that's going to end up being the target, but people who are gay, who are trans, who are minorities in other countries that will be at risk if encryption did not exist or it is so severely weakened as to become just as good as plain text communication, which is subject to man-in-the-middle attacks. The only way that we can possibly make everybody safe at the same time and protect innocent people is to make it a human right and legislate the closure of all backdoors, making sure that no one's communications is accessible no matter what. And no matter what you think about that, that is the only sane way that you can have a law for secure communications, because you're not supposed to be making laws to target criminals. You're supposed to be protecting your own citizens. And the only way you can do that is by actually protecting your citizens. So if encryption became illegal today, criminals and warlords would continue to use it, and everybody else would be vulnerable. But if you make encryption that is virtually unbreakable with no backdoors, all those people trying to survive, trying to escape, trying to have an identity and find a place in this world will be safe. And that matters more than everything else. Safety above prejudice is what we should have when it comes to all forms of prohibitions and regulations. Don't prohibit or regulate any secured communications unless it is for the betterment of its technology, not to make other people suffer unnecessarily. So, like this episode if you like it, dislike it if you didn't, share with those who think can benefit from this, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions for topics, email me at ask@tqaweekly.com or go to my website, tqaweekly.com, where you can see the show notes on this episode, past others, find other ways of subscribing, and of course, use the contact form to email me directly. And if you want to see me play video games, head over to twitch.tv/ZAxis1981, where I play every Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. The link's down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.